silence. Thank you. 1 foot in the grave.
Yes.
Take your time. A soldier is expendable and only 21. Although he's feeling older with the shell shock and a gun, he has to follow orders and he's treated like a slave. He goes into a firefight with 1 foot in the grave. When you're getting old, it's like you are invisible. Insurance going through the roof, it's inadvisable. Women look right through you now. How should I behave? I'm feeling like some kind of ghost with 1 foot in the grave. The woman is addicted. She is constantly depressed. No matter what a man is doing, she is not impressed. The alcohol is getting to her. Some cannot be saved. For most of her life, the woman has had 1 foot in the grave. The way some people drive around at 90 miles an hour, a near-death experience, but they like to feel the power. Now there is a lot of wreckage in the home of the brave, where some have 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot in the grave. The hobos and the homeless, they are sleeping on the ground, as if they're giving up the ghost, although they get around and ride the rails, they're not all there and moving in a daze. They get a leg up on a freight with 1 foot in the grave. If you're an existentialist, it means you can't assume you'll be around tomorrow, so you're sitting in a room and counting off the minutes. They're coming like a wave, the footage of infinity with 1 foot in the grave. The prophet went around the country talking to the poor until the men in power couldn't take it anymore, accusing him of profiteering and living in a cave. They nailed him to a telephone pole with 1 foot in the grave. A spider web and vapor trail are floating in the air, and when a man is lost in thought, he is barely there. His feet are on the ground, however, like they're made of clay, and those who live in close to the earth have 1 foot in the grave. This is the last one here. It's called A Pathological Community. It's about poets. For a long time, I was looking at it through the wrong end of a telepathic telescope. I think that I was strung out on the pathos of distance, and to hang around with writers seemed incestuous. I stayed within a stone's throw, but it wasn't an immersion, and I wonder why I was a loner, and how come I stayed out in the cold so long. I finally turned the telescope around, and now the poets are up close and personal. They're coming into focus, along with the Homeric dimension of the spoken word, a way of life for any poet worth his salt. I didn't expect much from the poetry community. It's only human, and there are a lot of variables. The vocals being stirred up by the brain waves running through it like a river of diversifying verite, and getting its cooperation is like herding lizards. You can listen to an ego poet with his ego poems. There are echo poets and some ecce homo poets. There are people who are barely literate and they reiterate it with the microphone. You listen to so many kinds of mental illness at an open mic and wonder if you've gone too far into the open. I'm reminded of the old days when someone said you were outacted but you weren't outwritten. What the fuck? I'm focused on the word. Wake up and smell the coffee house. You may be grounded in it, but it's like a slow death in the afternoon, a passive opium den. The poets have abandoned it, and some of their behavior is unheard of. I've heard a woman spill her guts and do it with intestinal fortitude and not a little attitude. Lubricant for those who are getting oral on a stage. The private is colliding with the public codependency. It turns into a shootout of linguistic mutants, and they have the angles covered while some backgrounds are uncovered. When your brains are scrambled by the rambling jack-offs, you declare a moratorium on oratory and retire to your literary laboratory, where you have some distillations on a burner of infernal learning. I'm experimenting with the mental condition, testing out a sequence with an evaporating significance, the eerie vapors rising from my head, condensing on the page and sensing my intelligence for what it's worth. A recipe for observation and subversion with some trial and error thrown in for suspense. A marijuana levitation, even though it's dumbing down the conversation and your timing may be off, it is intentional. There is a four-dimensional fortitude as you inhale the human condition, also known as THC. A woman is demanding TLC. It keeps you on your fingertips, and that is where the sparks are generated. Ask a guitarist if that isn't true. Some are rendezvousing with the muses by becoming invisible. Unfortunately, their transparency becomes a habit. No one knows that they are moonlighting as a poet. And in being so ephemeral, some people see it as a lack of substance and they run right over them. The tire tracks of otherness are registered as lines of writing, or a last line of resistance on the part of someone who's too mental for his own good, but some neuroses and pathologies are unavoidable. You're thrown into them by the physics of your own existence. Going through the ceiling as a secondhand marijuana pulls you up into the sky, you're on the roof, abandoning the party, while you gaze into the distance, the electric fog on the horizon while the party is disintegrating. As the poetry community can fall apart and come together like a big amoeba. The poetry of commoners is not PC if it is worth its peppercorns. It is a pathologic conversation and a possible conversion, a power chord in a prosaic country. It's a long prose cutter and a philosophic coke brush. It's a poor man's concerto and a pornographic curtain as you pan the circumstantial evidence of a personal condition with poetic correlations in a pandemonium chorus. There are phallic candles and a pussy cunning, not to mention paranoia, coffee, pot, and cigarettes, or Pinot in a cup. It pacifies the critics so a paranormal composition will ensue and maybe please the crowd. They like it when you're pissing on a congressman, performing with some congas in a post-industrial club.